And in Luke chapter 10, verse 38, it says the following. As Jesus and the disciples continued on their way to Jerusalem, they came to a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. Her sister Mary sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he taught, but Martha was distracted by the big dinner she was preparing. She came to Jesus and said, "Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here while I do all the work? Tell her to come and help me." But the Lord said to her, "My dear Martha, you are worried and upset over all these details. There is only one thing worth being concerned about it. Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her." I think this is a place in Scripture that we've probably often heard a lot of people speak on already. And I'm not sure that I'm going to add anything new or extraordinary to it. But when we come into an atmosphere of worship and when we come into a time of worship, I think that this scripture always comes to mind because it seems to most closely reflect God's heart towards us and what he desires from us. Because it's very easy for us to get caught up in the motion of things, in the steps and the procedures and all of the right way to do things, that we neglect that God really truly does love it when we just spend time with him. He really does love it when we just take the time to be in his presence and we're not running around doing something. We're not going from one service to the next. We're not going from one practice to the next. We're not going from work to home or from home to school or from home to school to work and all these different things that we have throughout our day. God truly cherishes when we take the time like Mary did to sit at his feet. But one of the things, and a couple of things actually, that kind of interests me about this particular story is that it says that Martha welcomed him into her home. And why I find that interesting is that Martha was the one who welcomed Jesus into her home, but then she was the one who was distracted and neglected to spend time with Jesus. And I think that this closely resembles us as believers, that we have welcomed Jesus into our life. We do believe in Jesus. We do love Jesus. We follow after him. We come to service. We serve in the church. We do all the right things. We have welcomed him into our home. And yet, we neglect the time that is necessary to just be with him, just to be near to him. And I don't think that this is some kind of mystical or strange thing. It's very practical. When we're at home alone, when we're just have a free minute, when we have time that we could quote unquote spare, how are we choosing to spend it? Because we're so used to going from one place to the next that I find in my own life that when I finally have a minute to sit down, I always have this phrase that comes into my head. I'm like, I just need to take a minute for myself. I just need to do something for myself because I've been running around from all these different things. I've been doing all this stuff. I just need a minute for myself. And I found, I'm speaking from my own experience, that this minute for myself is so wasteful. I so easily get distracted by Instagram, by my phone, by just reading or watching something that is just super mindless, but it's a minute for myself. And I know in my own life, I neglect that intimacy and that time to spend with Jesus and to be like Mary, sitting at the Lord's feet, listening to what he taught. You may ask yourself, well, how can I do that practically? How can I listen to what the Lord is teaching? And for us today as believers, because Jesus is not walking right alongside us on this earth, very practically, we hear it so often. That is why we read the Word. That is why we spend time in devotion and Bible study. That's why we crack open the Word. We sit down and we think about what we're reading. We don't just read it and walk away, but we think about it. What is this saying? What is the Lord saying? What does this say about God? How do I respond to what I'm reading in the Word? But Martha was distracted by the big dinner she was preparing. It was a good thing for Martha to make a big dinner. She had an important guest. She had Jesus in her home. There was nothing wrong with the essence of what she was doing. But I'm learning for myself, and I'm reminding myself so often every day that God is not impressed by the big dinners. He's not impressed by the big, great services. He's not looking for just motion and things that we do. He's looking for our heart and our dedication to him. Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here while I do all the work? And how interesting that when Martha does come to Jesus, she's welcomed him into her home. She's distracted with all the things in her life. And when she decides to come to him, she comes to him with a complaint. How often I do the same thing. How often when I finally have that minute where I'm like, fine, Jesus, I need to talk to you. Do you know what's going on? Do you know what's wrong? All this stuff is wrong. What's up with that? It's so unfair. Martha welcomed him into her home. She was distracted, and then when she came to him, she came with a complaint. As we continue to worship, looking at this example, and trust me, I'm not dogging on Martha, and I'm not by any means saying that going to church and serving is not necessary or that we shouldn't do it. But what I'm emphasizing is that we quickly substitute activity with intimacy. That if I just do enough things, if I just have enough on my agenda, if I have enough on my to-do list, if I can tell enough people all the different stuff that I've been doing and how busy I am, then they'll really understand how great I am and how important and how busy and dedicated I am because I have this great big list. For some reason, we don't feel so special when we tell somebody, well, what did you do today? Well, I sat with the Lord for 2 hours today. I read my Bible. That's all I did today. So easily we write that off as being somehow insignificant or unproductive. But that's the very thing that our spirit needs to be able to adequately do all of the motions and things we do in service. We cannot come into our ministry and into service and into worship completely empty and completely neglecting the Lord the entire time up until that point. Because then we will be like Martha. We will come to the Lord and the first thing out of our mouth will be a complaint about how things aren't going good with us. Because up until that point, we weren't with Jesus. We were just working around him. We were just doing things around him. There is such a difference in what it looks like to acknowledge Jesus in our daily life and to be with him, and when we welcome him, to walk alongside him versus welcoming him and then working around him. As we continue to worship, I'm definitely switching my mindset, and I'm telling myself this. What am I coming to Jesus with? Am I coming with another complaint? Am I coming with another thing that isn't fair, that isn't right, that he's not doing? Or am I really taking the time and opportunity to be in his presence, to be like Mary and to sit at his feet? Because the interesting thing that Jesus says is that once we discover that, it cannot be taken away from us. Jesus said that what Mary has discovered, this greater thing, to be at his feet, it will not be taken away from her. The only thing that could take us away from God's presence, from being able to be at his feet, is ourselves saying, I don't have time for this, or I don't want to do this, or I don't want to make time for this. Let us stand once again and let us continue to worship. And what I want to just pray about, and what I'm encouraging that we would unite in prayer together, our goal to be that we would recognize in ourselves, whether we are like Martha or like Mary, that we would recognize and value the importance of spending those moments in our day that we're able to with the Lord. And in all of our busyness, finding that time to rest, not I need a minute for myself, but I need a minute with the Lord. I need an hour with the Lord. I need time with Jesus, because that which I have found will not be taken from me. What you gain from the time that you will spend in devotion and dedication to the Lord will not be taken from you.